beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in an expert's mind, there are few. Do you agree? What are your thoughts? Join me as I talk to Tony about the beginner's mind as one of the 7 attitudes of mindfulness by Jon Kabat-Zinn. This is the Mindfulness Everything show. Welcome as we talk about the beginner's mind today with Tony, a fellow mindfulness or MBSR instructor, as we unpack what is it about of being taking on a beginner's mind and how do we apply it to our everyday lives. Hi, Tony. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Han Ee. Good to be here again. Thank you.
Great to have you with us. So here we are to talk about the beginner's mind, right? And we shared that quote about how with the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. What are your thoughts about this quote by Shunri Suzuki?
I love it. It's a really good reminder to me because, especially when you're as old as I am and you've done a lot of study and teaching and all the rest of it, you can get caught up in thinking, I know a lot of things, I know a lot about this or that. But this reminds us to come fresh, not only to our practice, but also in everyday life. And especially, I think it's important these days because life's changed so much, right? Maybe we don't know, or maybe we've come to the point where the things we thought we knew and did know, maybe don't support life as well anymore. So I think this idea of beginner's mind is another way of saying to come to the experience that you're having in that moment with fresh eyes, and to allow it to unfold again without, again, connecting to judgment, non-judgment, again, connecting to patience, because not thinking that we know everything there is to know about what we're experiencing in that moment, but bringing that curiosity and, maybe this is going to be different this time. Maybe I missed something last time. I don't know. Does that resonate with you?
So as you share that, right? I'm all about quotes today. So there's this other phrase, right? So we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are, right? And so how we see things, we may think we know everything, we have the answer, but hang on, do we really have everything? And what does that say about us? And if we pause and we take on a beginner's mind to be more curious, what comes up and what emerges? I think it's a very interesting and fascinating experience, but not always easy to do, huh?
No, I was just going to say it's not easy, especially in the way that we've been trained and educated, and, we're encouraged to become experts, and you need that in certain areas. It's not to say you leave. I guess what it helps us to remember to do is to continually be open, to add to the stories that we know, to add to what we know. But the biggest thing, the biggest difference, and I said this at the beginning when we started this Attitudes program, that these words don't always have the same definition that we think everyday life has. And beginner's mind also means to allow yourself to have a direct experience of whatever it is that's going on for you in that moment, rather than letting it come through the thinking mind. So to directly experience it with the sensing body. So, one of my practices is, for example, is I have a beautiful tree in the next door neighbours, and I try to look at that tree without saying how beautiful you are, how great you are, thank you for being there. But trying to experience what does being with that tree, without any judgments, without any stories about it, which is really hard to do. I find really hard to do. But what's it like to be with something like a tree or like a person, and you don't have any preconceived ideas, and you're just experiencing them in that moment? And it's hard to do, but the more you practice it, you kind of get a bit hooked on it. because it's new every time. So that's really a thing that's evolved for me through my practice, understanding that a bit more and trying to do it a bit more.
So I think there's this also idea about, I mean, where we are experiencing something novel and new, of course, it may be somewhat easier to adopt a beginner's mind, right? I think the key is when you're experiencing something familiar, right, or something that's boring, right? Can you still bring a beginner's mind to some of these experiences and see what emerges? And I think that is where the rubber hits the road, right? When it comes to adopting a beginner's mind as an attitude. Not always easy again.
No. And I think that's where the breath work comes in. And using the breath to and using the whole meditation process of using the breath to support you. And as the wandering mind comes in and tries to tell you, oh, we've seen this before, or how boring is this, or I need to go and eat, that idea of, yes, I hear what you're saying, but right now I'm coming back to my breath. And I think that is what helps us to cultivate the ability to what's the word? To manage the mind and allow, if you keep coming to the breath, acknowledging it and keep coming to the breath, it tends to eventually sort of quieten down, go a little bit into the background. So the more we do that, it doesn't have to be perfect, and it never will be, but that means that there's that little bit of space that something else can come in and show itself. So I think the breath is important.
Not only the breath, right? So, I remember we were in, I can't even remember, it was Ireland or Denmark, where we were there for the MBSR instructor training, right? I don't know how many times Jon Kabat-Zinn got us out into the fields to do mindful walking. Man, it was how I was like, are we not done yet? How many times have we done?
I think that must have been the time when we was, realizing that Thich Nhat Hanh had something, had hit on something with all the walking.
Yeah, it was walking and walking. How far can you walk? You're walking in circles too. It's like there's not a lot of space, right? And I think that was exactly the essence of that practice, right? How can you still bring that beginner's mind to whatever you're experiencing, and what it could be pleasant, it could be unpleasant, it could be easy, it could be difficult, it could be and you can still cultivate that ability to bring that fresh eyes to experiencing whatever we're experiencing for the first time.
And I think that the raisin meditation that we do in the first session of mindfulness-based stress reduction is starting to set the scene for that, to eat a raisin using our five senses, where normally, we probably take handfuls and just throw them into our mouth and quickly, chew and swallow. And that sort of, and, I've had participants say to me when they've done that meditation, because of the slowing down and bringing the beginner's mind to it, they go, oh, I never used to like raisins, but they're quite nice. Or you'll get someone who used to love raisins and now doesn't because they've connected with all the sweetness. And so the beginner's mind does kind of offer some rewards with practice, that you discover something new.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, to me, it's also about this intention of learning, right? And maybe to some extent unlearning. I think especially things that are familiar, right? I mean, and what can we experience, and what is this that I'm experiencing using words or emotions or physical sensations? What is it teaching us about this current moment? And each moment is a new moment, right? So everything, say the way we experience the tree, the way we experience a particular food or a raisin is new. It's never been replicated before, because the moment that we're experiencing is a new moment. It has never happened before, right? And then the next moment is another new moment.
New one.
All right.
And the
Yeah.
difference is bringing the awareness to it. And the awareness arises when we can slow down and use our breath. And that helps us to be with whatever is there in the moment. We'll never do it perfectly, because let's face it, you can't leave yourself somewhere else. You know, we come with all our enculturation of, you know, our families, our society, our foods, our experiences, our traumas, or whatever it is. We can't leave ourselves behind. But it's an interesting cultivation, and I think it bears a lot of fruit if we can stick with it.
So how do you advise someone, especially with a lot of experience, a lot of expertise, right? It's like, I'm an expert in mindfulness. Teach me, Tony. How can I be better? Well, how would you respond to such a person like that?
Well, see, I think that there you start with that. Like, this is not about becoming better. This is about experiencing whatever is in the moment. And so in the moment, if this is really hard, I cannot disassociate myself from this voice that tells me it's like this. Well, then you experience that. What is it like to have this incessant voice inside me telling me that this is the only way it is? You know, and then you use your breath to support you. So when you're doing mindfulness meditation, or you're taking mindfulness into your world, once you've learned how to do it, nothing is not okay to make an object of your focus. Everything that comes up, so whether it's resistance, whether it's expertise, that's okay. Be kind to yourself. Yeah. And sometimes you can say, okay, yes, I know that it's like that. That's what I've experienced before. Is there something else here in this moment? And then just quieten down, just breathe, just walk slowly if you're in the street, just listen if you're with a person. Sometimes just dropping that question in. Yes, I know my mother-in-law is going to go on with the same story. I know that. But if I can just breathe, just stop here for a moment and ask, is there something new here? Is there something different here for me? And then wait. It's practice.
So we must, sounds like, yeah, there's a wonderful opportunity, because we live, there's so many familiar things around us, right? We can easily pick just one, right? And work with it. And it's how we respond and how we relate to the experience and how we're living it. And therein is the practice. We don't need bells, we don't need guidance. No. We have our experiences as the guide.
Exactly. And if that experience includes difficulty staying in beginner's mind at the moment, then that's part of it. It's part of it. And that's why the self... See, the thing is, what participants will recognize eventually is, if you're doing consistent breath practice or body scan or whatever it is, as you set that intention to take care of yourself, compassion arises automatically. And so, I mean, isn't that an amazing system? That using your breath to calm your nervous system, to open to what is here, and often the difficulties in our life come up, and yet our system also has in place this arising compassion, and that can create a big space for every sort of response or reaction that we can have in the moment. And we don't need to like one over the other. It's all about allowing that space, and then the mind and the body take care of themselves.
Mm.
But it does take consistent practice,
Mm.
and it does take time.
And intention, right? So being receptive to this experience, to this sense of spaciousness and possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope I'm not sounding like an expert, because it's, you know, I'm suggesting things that I've learned as I've had to learn how to teach, and what my participants are telling me, but it doesn't take away that it's difficult, and that it continues to be difficult depending on the experience that is arising. But I think it's really important for participants to also hear that with consistent practice, it does get easier. And, you know, some of us have been practicing for a little while, have known that. And so it's important, because new participants need something to keep them going when it feels a bit hard, I think.
So when you shared that, right, one of the things that came up for me, right, is this thing about not knowing, right? And it's okay to not know, right? And therein is that wonderful opportunity to bring that beginner's mind to what is it like to be not knowing, right? And see what emerges and use that as a practice, because we're so inundated that we need to know this, we need to know that, we need to have all these gaps sorted out. We cannot express vulnerability or weakness. But yet here am I mean, I really don't know. I'm clueless. I'm lost. And I think therein is when we're lost, we bring that beginner's mind, and this is where the practice really begins. That's where things can emerge.
Absolutely. And it can be a scary place to be in when you've been, you know, so involved in not learning to know things. But there's also a certain freedom in it. Sometimes, you know, your whole body can just let go for a few seconds of the responsibility of having to know. And it also, in my experience, I'm talking personally, it's been a big thing to learn not to be okay with not to know, because I've been a teacher for so long, and teachers are supposed to know everything, and you know, and for me, vulnerability has arisen, and then you have to learn. I've had to learn to be with vulnerability, and also you have to discern. You know, if I don't know this, is that okay for whoever I'm responsible for? You know, are they safe? And so it is a discernment, but there is a place for it and a need for it, because acknowledging that you don't know helps to create that spaciousness. And again, I just say, bring the breath to it, because the breath tends to calm us biologically. You know, the nervous system calms us when we're in that space where it might get a little bit vulnerable to think we don't know.
The breath, and it's all about the breath. Yeah, it's an accessible resource that we have available to. It's not just about the breath, bringing the attitudes to practice with it, right? And that's the nice thing about it. Yeah.
And I think the last thing I want to say is that it's not just you. You know, like, we all experience this. Whether we're doing mindfulness or not, you will come to a point in your life when at sometimes you will not know. And so, you know, we need to know that it's a natural phenomenon. It's part of our learning, so we don't get stale. And that's, I think, what beginner's mind reminds us of, that there is a possibility of being continually fresh in our knowing and in our being. So it offers a lovely gift.
So in that not knowing, that's where the knowing, that's where the wisdom can emerge, right?
Absolutely. The wisdom that is deep within, not just up here, not learnt wisdom. I think there is a poem that talks about the two kinds of intelligences. You know, one is that it's through education, but the other is through pausing and listening to the wisdom within you that comes from, you know, kind of generations but it's within you too. And so easily accessible if we are quiet.
Thank you, Tony, for the sharing and the discussions. And so here we have it today. We focus on the attitude of a beginner's mind, something that will allow us to experience the moment with fresh eyes and new beginnings. And that is an attitude that we can all tap into, whether it's with our breath or things that are familiar, or in situations where we're not knowing, bringing that sense of kindness and that pause. So hopefully someone has a takeaway in how they can apply it to their daily living. So thank you very much for joining us. This is Mindfulness Everything, and thank you, Tony, for sharing your wisdom and your insights with us. And see you again.
And I've learned a lot.
Good
Thank
stuff.
you.